My name is Michael Vickerman, and I've been with Renew Wisconsin since its inception. One of the last things I did as executive director was to launch the first ever energy summit back in 2012 at the Pyle Center. It was a far smaller affair, and it was more of a primal scream than anything else. We had no idea whether there would be a second or third, certainly not 15. But it's a real pleasure on my part to come back to the summit and reconnect with this wonderful community doing great things. I'm so proud to be a part of this community and just re-engage and reinvigorate myself doing so. And I also recommend, well, one of the things I look forward to is to expand my collection of cool sunglasses here. And Current Electric has a number of them at their booth. At any rate, so it's my privilege and pleasure to introduce, let me stop right here and ask Paul, Eric, Kim, and Anjali to come up to the stage and sit at one of the chairs. And as they're doing so, I would like to introduce the next program segment, which is Clean Energy Stories. Now, it's easy to fall into the habit of framing clean energy in abstract terms as a means of achieving desirable policy goals. But that would be selling clean energy short. It takes people power to make clean energy a force in our daily lives. In my opinion, the best way to communicate how that is unfolding in Wisconsin is through storytelling. The next four speakers are going to lead you through their respective clean energy journeys, and in doing so, they'll bring to life the vision, creativity, and determination that turns an abstract policy goal into a practical reality. And in the end, produce something that could be utterly groundbreaking. So let's meet our speakers. And they're all here, great. Our first speaker is Paul Schechter, Executive Director of Sunnyside Development, which was the catalyst for the energy makeover that resulted in Wisconsin's first net zero apartment community. Paul?
Hello, everyone. I need to get my slides up. There we go. So, as Michael said, my name is Paul Schechter. I'm the Executive Director of Sunnyside Development, and my talk today will be on Greenspire Apartments, which is Wisconsin's first affordable housing tax credit development that is also 100% net zero carbon. So, a little bit about myself. I've been in housing for quite some time, and I'm formally educated in sustainable energy. And several years ago, I realized an unfortunate reality, which is if we continue to build housing the way that we currently do, the millions of new housing units required to solve the affordable housing crisis will only make climate change worse. And that's personally not okay with me. I don't want to solve one crisis by exacerbating another. So in 2018, I founded Sunnyside Development, which has the mission of doing both, of creating affordable housing that is truly environmentally sustainable. And we have a number of projects under our belt currently, but by far our crown jewels is Greenspire Apartments. This project was brought to me by the longtime property manager, Sue Brohan, who said, Paul, we have this wonderful community in Stoughton. It's their public housing. It's 92 units. It was built in the 1970s and 80s. It's spread out across 6 buildings on 6 acres of land. But there's a problem. It really needs some help. It needs some rehabilitation. Now, there is a solution for that in the marketplace. It's called the Low Income Housing Tax Credit, or LIHTC for short. And it is great at taking existing affordable housing, such as Greenspire, and bringing it up to livable standards, which is great for the community. The only problem was that she was talking to me, and our mission is both affordability and sustainability. So LIHTC by itself was not sufficient to do deep energy retrofits to this property. Fortunately, the green gods were shining upon us, and in August of 2022, the Inflation Reduction Act was signed into law, and a particularly interesting part of this was called the Green and Resilient Retrofit Program, or GRRP, and this was basically an experiment. Scientists say that we need to bring the carbon footprint of the entire country down to zero by 2050, so we got to start somewhere. How about public housing? Let's see if we can take some of this sector and go 100% carbon neutral. So there's 3 cohorts of GRRP, and we applied to the leading edge cohort, which is designed for projects that are already going to do development, such as low-income housing tax credits. And in exchange for a bunch of money, you have to commit to one of 12 certifications. We chose the International Living Future Zero Energy certification, and this was wonderful. It provided $65,000 per unit, $5.5 million total. Sounds like a lot of money. However, it's kind of analogous to like a 2,000-pound elephant. Personally, I don't know if that's a big elephant or a little elephant. All I know is that it's a 2,000-pound elephant. And similar with this, there's not a one-size-fits-all to going 100% net zero. You really have to roll up your sleeves and take a look at the property and all aspects of it and find out how much it's going to cost. So the first step in that is developing an energy model. We hired thermal energy system specialists, a local group of engineers based here in Madison, and we had a number of requests of them, 3 challenges in particular. The first one was to take the overall energy consumption of the building currently and bring it down as much as possible with building science, materials, and technology, but also add property-wide air conditioning, because this is the modern era, climate change is real, and these are seniors, we need air conditioning. Once we have this overall number of reduced energy, hopefully, consumption, then we have to offset not just 100% of it, but 120%, so we have a margin of error. And it's actually was quite a challenge to even fit that amount of solar on site. And thanks to Nick from Full Spectrum, who successfully did that. And then, of course, we have the third constraint, which I'm sure everyone is familiar with, just stay on budget and on time. And it was a challenge. In fact, we went through 9 different iterations with the whole group, not just the modelers, but the contractors, the architect, the developers. And there was some items that stayed, and there was certain other things that got taken out. So what got removed? The initial scope had geothermal, but at the time, that was 3 times more expensive than air source heat pumps, and there was a year-long waiting list for the drill rigs, so that got removed. We wanted to wrap the entire, or had considerations of wrapping the entire building in foam board to stop thermal bridging, but the existing brick had many decades left of useful life, so we would have had to cover that up and build new siding, which had its own embodied energy and cost. So we got rid of that. Similarly, air sealing that we didn't use. We did certainly dedicate a lot of time and energy to building envelope, triple pane Alpine windows went in everywhere, R80 insulation in the attics, energy recovery ventilation, so forth and so on, air source heat pumps. And as a last minute addition, we had some contingency money left, so we decided to swap out all the electric resistive water heaters for heat pump water heaters, just to add a little bit more margin, and I'm really glad we did. So once we had the general concept of load and consumption, the next step was solar. And this is a satellite view of the actual solar on Greenspire Apartments today. There's 6 buildings. All the roofs are east-west facing, which isn't ideal for solar, but actually is kind of nice for load matching because now you have production more evenly spread out through the day. There wasn't enough room on the rooftops alone, so we built 4 carports. The 2 at the very bottom of the screen that are boxed in orange are the beautiful timber-framed Couloir solar canopies, which double as community shelters, and they're street-facing because they're so pretty. Then one directly up from that, in the yellow box, is a massive solar carport that covers the entire parking lot, and there's 8 EV chargers, actually under one of the Couloir carports. And then we also have another, the last one is in the upper left-hand corner. So 743 kilowatts total. It's pretty big for a commercial property. It's the biggest full spectrum has done, I've been told. So that's great. Now, oh, and here's some nice photos of the people that made it possible. We have Cal on the left and Joe on the right, and my colleague Abby standing in front of one of the Couloir solar canopies. So now the actual results. Well, we modeled with quite a margin, thankfully, about 140% production above consumption. The reality with a big asterisk that we've only gotten 4 months of solar data so far is we're still net zero at about 109%. Our consumption was quite a bit higher than we had modeled, but we think that might not be accurate because it currently includes the construction energy, and who knows exactly how much that was. It wasn't on a separate meter. And then there's another thing that the energy model absolutely failed at, and that was human behavior. So it's an interesting beast to have an affordable housing property go 100% net zero, because you've got a ton of solar and you have to have it be connected to a meter that runs backwards, and whose meter should it be? Well, it'd be nice to have some or all of the benefit go to the low-income residents, but it's a bit of a trick to divide solar into 92 private meters. It's not very feasible, and even if it was, it wouldn't be even because some panels get more sun than others. So instead, we came up with a different approach, which the tenants used to pay for their own electric baseboard heat and window units. We replaced those with mini splits, and we put all that load on the house meters, which was then offset by the solar. So indirectly, the solar was benefiting the tenants. The problem with that is they used to pay their electric bill, and now it's on the house. So does that change consumption patterns? Yes, it does. But that's why you have margins of error. And I know I'm running short on time, but I want to quickly talk about 2 other things. Water conservation. We didn't need to do this as a part of our certification, but took a little arm twisting, but I managed to convince everyone to go for the Niagara Stealth 0.8 gallons per flush toilet. Highly recommend. It's saving the property 20,000 gallons per month in water, which is pretty amazing. And then we also had 6 acres of land, which had a ton of turf grass on it, which needed to be mowed, and pesticides, and has a lot of runoff and stormwater going down the drain. So we hired Permaculture Works Cooperative on the north side of Madison, and they worked their magic to transform this property. We now have bioswales and rain gardens, which dramatically save the water on site, and it doesn't go down the drain. There's food forests, raised bed gardens, and large rainwater harvesting tanks. So all in all, fantastic project. Thanks very much for listening to my speech. One shameless plug, if you found this inspiring at all and you'd like to join Sunnyside Development, we have a few openings on our board, and the elections are next week. So get in touch if you would like to learn more. Thanks so much.
Our second speaker is Eric Udelhoffen, Senior Vice President of One Energy Renewables, which develops community-scale solar projects all around the country. Eric is also a founding director of SolarShare Wisconsin, which is a state-based cooperative that enables members to invest directly in community-scale solar power plants. Eric?
Thanks, Michael, and thanks for having me. This is definitely my favorite conference. It's the only one I can bike to. I was thinking next year if I could skate here, that would fulfill a long-time dream, so hopefully the conditions allow. So I'm here today to talk about Solar Share Wisconsin Cooperative. We are, as Michael mentioned, a Wisconsin-based cooperative that is intended to democratize investment in solar across the state. And also create new ways for Wisconsin solar businesses to fund their projects. All those goals exist alongside the intention to help grow rural economies. So our board consists of 2 Class A members, which are our business members, and then 5 Class B members, which are our investor members. And basically what happens is any of those 5 businesses can bring project investment opportunities forward to the cooperative, and then the board decides whether or not to invest. So we were launched by Renew Wisconsin, several board members and myself, and helped launch the cooperative, and then Renew kind of has nurtured us over the years. We still have our address at their address, and they receive our mail, and they've just been a great supporter over the years. We also received grants from the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation and EPA that basically over the first 4 years of the cooperative's life funded all of our overhead and all of our legal expenses and accounting and so forth, so that all of the member investment was able to be mobilized directly into projects. So over the past 4 years, we've grown from having 75 investor members to now we've got 222. And that is basically just anyone that lives in the state of Wisconsin can become a member. It's $25. I'll put a link at the end on how to get up there. But once you're a member, then you can invest when the cooperative has investment opportunities. And we have 5 business members and have had those since the beginning. So that's One Energy, where I work, but we've also got Northwind, Ethos, Arch, and Current Electric. So we're also always looking for business members. Anyone that's got an office in the state of Wisconsin can join as a business member. And we've grown our cumulative member investment from $450,000 in 2022 to now over $2 million. And that, the majority of that money, just right at $2 million, has actually been mobilized and invested into projects. And the total megawatts has grown to now be 60 megawatts worth of projects that SolarShare has invested in. So just want to give a quick example of one of our first or early investments was in Webster Creek, which is just south of New Lisbon in Juneau County. And with this project, SolarShare actually bought the land that is underneath the project. And so SolarShare owns the land and then earns the lease revenues from this operating solar project. That's a 1.5 megawatt site that operates for Oakdale Electric Cooperative. And then basically, we used member investments to purchase the land, and then members are receiving dividends on that investment through the cooperative. And one of the paybacks that I like the best from this site is that every year the site produces about 500 pounds of honey, which one year I committed to buy all that honey, and we're still giving it away. So I think we've got some at the table if anyone wants some. So what I really came up to talk about was the Stag Moose development loan that SolarShare funded around this time last year. And our Stag Moose project that One Energy developed consists of 21 projects. And it was something that we had received a PACE award for through the legislation that allowed for a lot more investment into renewable energy in rural areas. And unfortunately, last year was a tough year for the industry. I don't have to tell you all that twice. But one of the things that happened is that funding went away. And so we relied on SolarShare and the development loan that they provided to allow that project to continue, along with several other partners that have helped that portfolio weather the storm. But the map here shows where the projects are located, and you can see they're mostly in western and kind of northwest Wisconsin. And there's a couple of shots here of two of the projects under construction. And that loan amount was $500,000 and will be paid back within 2 years. So we've got 1 year left on that. And then a couple things I want to mention about that portfolio. About a quarter of the labor hours, and I know there was some talk about job creation earlier. We've been tracking the labor hours pretty closely on these, and about a quarter of the labor hours performed on all of these projects were by apprentices who lived within 50 miles of the site. So just think about that. I mean, it's, as an apprentice, you're basically learning on the job. You also are being trained by the union. And then once you've completed that apprenticeship, you've got a family supporting job that you can do in solar or outside of solar, performing other construction related work. So we're really proud of that metric. The projects that were built as part of this portfolio last year will produce 65 million kilowatt hours for rural electric cooperatives, and they're all at a cost that saves those cooperatives and their members money. We also planted 75 acres to native pollinator mix, and 125 acres will be grazed, hayed, or part of an apiary producing honey. So that was another commitment we had, where every one of these sites is going to be dual use in some fashion. One of the sites I really like is this Greenfield solar project in Vernon County. It's in La Crosse County for Vernon Electric Cooperative. And just wanted to show a photo here of this isn't the sheep grazing because we just built it last year, but the site is going to host a flock of sheep from Hidden Springs Creamery, which is a cheese maker. So if anyone goes to the market on the Capitol Square, you'll be able to next year or the year after buy cheese that's produced by solar grazed sheep. So I know a lot of people don't necessarily believe sheep grazing is farming, at least from conversations I have around the state, but nobody questions whether cheese production is farming. So we're excited about that. And then another shot of this project, Hannibal Solar up in northern Wisconsin, just showing that solar can integrate to the North Woods. I mean, you see this site, it's some open farmland, but a lot of wooded area up there. And this project will have 45 species planted on it that are all native ecotype to the area on 15 acres. The second round of stag moose is going to be starting up in a couple months here once the weather allows, and that's another 10 projects totaling 30 megawatts. 7 of those are in Wisconsin, and SolarShare board approved a $750,000 loan to support the development and construction of those projects as well. So yeah, really appreciate you having me, and I guess one thing I wanted to just end with, because it's a conference largely of renewable energy professionals here, one of the main reasons we started the cooperative, and this is something that Corey talked about, our executive director who led the organization for the last 4 years, he said, when you have a party, you want to invite your neighbors so they don't call the cops. And I really liked that expression, and it really landed when we, have been presenting about some of these projects that are maybe controversial with some neighbors, but when we present the fact that they could potentially invest and participate in the economic benefits, and maybe graze their sheep on the land, it really changed the way that they perceive the projects. And even if they don't necessarily become investors, the fact that they're invited is very important. So a big part of what we're trying to do is set the bar high for community engagement, but also just create ways that more people can be involved with and benefit from the energy transition that our state is experiencing and that we all know we need. So One of our previous portfolios was called the Butter Solar Portfolio. And the idea behind that is like a lot of the projects we do are spread around the state, and hopefully everybody loves it, like everybody loves butter. But this one doesn't have as great of a name, but hopefully the idea is the same. So thanks everyone for having us.
Our third speaker is Kim Bauer, Renew's Institutional Giving and Events Manager. I'm very pleased that Kim is stepping out of the behind-the-scenes shadows that come with planning this summit, and this will allow her to highlight an initiative she's headed at Renew for more than a year, and it's called the Green Revolution of Women, GROW for short. So, Kim, could you come up and tell us about it?
Hi, everyone. I'm Kim, like Michael said. I have kind of been forced out of the shadows today. You guys might have seen me a lot, kind of running around, but I'm not usually the face of Renew. So I stumbled into the renewable energy industry about 2.5 years ago when I first started working with Renew. And I found myself in a lot of rooms with a lot of people that I didn't know, a lot of men predominantly that I didn't know, and I felt a little uncomfortable. I felt like I had imposter syndrome, like I wasn't supposed to be there, and that I just didn't really know anyone. And I became best friends really quickly with one of my colleagues, Julia, and we kind of lamented over the same thing as two young women. We often found ourselves in the corners of rooms together at events, wishing we knew other people, wishing there were other women in the room with us, and just kind of looking for a community that we felt like we didn't have. And our roles were both in communications and events, so it also felt like when we were at events, especially networking ones, people didn't necessarily want to talk to us because we weren't doing policy, we weren't doing programs, we weren't doing installations, things like that. So we felt like we were very out of our comfort zone and just looking for a type of community that we didn't really have anywhere. So we decided to take matters into our own hands. We formed GROW, the Green Revolution of Women. We wanted it to be more than just like a networking event. We have plenty of those, obviously, for everyone in the industry. But we wanted to create a space where women could come together and form relationships that weren't just professional, that could be personal as well. And we kind of just started holding quarterly happy hours. We started this in fall of 2024. I formed some really great friendships over the last 2 years with women in clean energy areas that like aren't my focus, that I have no knowledge on. I've learned more about the renewables industry from them than I ever knew. Through this community, we've seen multiple women secure jobs, mentor each other, make time to catch up outside of work, and to cheer each other on in our both personal and professional successes. Thanks to GROW now, when I attend industry events, I can actually always find a friendly face. I've actually seen plenty of GROW attendees here today, so shout out to you guys. It's been great seeing you. Thank you for coming to the summit. And I feel really honored that when Julia and I went looking for something that we felt was missing, we found our community in GROW. So obviously we're always looking to grow the GROW community, excuse the pun. So if you guys want to join this space, we meet every quarter in Madison at Giant Jones Brewing. Our next event is on March 12th. And we would love to see you there. If you want more information, you can head over to the Renew table in the Capitol Promenade. There's a QR code. You can subscribe to our email list, and I'll be there for most of the day if you guys have any questions or want to talk about anything. Thank you.
Our fourth and final speaker is Anjali Balakrishna. She is Senior Program Manager of Renewable Energy and Community Impact for Microsoft. Not long from now, Microsoft's Mount Pleasant campus will become the largest electricity customer in the state of Wisconsin. Anjali will draw attention to Microsoft's efforts to match that facility's substantial electricity use with renewable power. Anjali?
Hi, everyone. I want to start by saying this is my first time ever to Wisconsin. I'm from Atlanta. I'm very cold. And my colleague who's here today also threatened to take me ice fishing, so please pray for me or whatever good vibes you can send my way. But I'm super happy to be here and to share a little bit about Microsoft's work in sustainability, specifically our work in renewable energy procurement, and even more specifically, our work in how we incorporate community benefit and impact into our procurement. So in 2020, the senior leadership at Microsoft laid out 4 very ambitious sustainability commitments for the company with the time horizon of 2030. So we've had a lot of folks at the company that have been working hard to try to achieve these goals, lay the groundwork over the past 5 years. So the first goal, and where most of my work sits, is in our carbon negative goal. And so what we mean by that is that by 2030, we'll be removing more carbon from the atmosphere than we emit. We can do that by obviously creating efficiencies in our supply chain, but also by matching all of our electricity consumption with new, clean, and carbon-free energy capacity. And so that's what my team works on. We also have a robust carbon removal team that is working to remove the rest that we can't through reductions. Second goal, which I know is always of interest in the Great Lakes region, is our water positive goal. And so this goal is about replenishing more water than we use. And our data centers require water for cooling, and so this is an important goal for us to make sure we're keeping the watersheds and water sources where we operate well taken care of. Zero waste, a bit more self-explanatory, eliminating waste in our construction and operations, and then protecting ecosystems, so conserving more land than we use. And so we've made some great progress. This is a lot of words, small font, don't worry about it, across a lot of these goals. Some of the ones just to point out that we've already achieved, which is very exciting, the water goal of replenishing more water than we use, protecting more land than we use. And so this is a good start. We're halfway through the century or the decade, and so 2030 we still got our ways to go. But we think it's not important. It's important, of course, to have ambitious sustainability goals, but how we achieve those goals is just as, if not more important. And that's where the work that my team really comes in, which is exploring how can we make sure that our sustainability efforts positively impact communities and are inclusive enough to make sure that they don't negatively impact some communities disproportionately. And so again, here in the small font, you'll see a couple of examples of what it looks like for sustainability actions to have more or less positive community impact. So I'll speak up for a second on our carbon negative goal. So one of the ways that Microsoft can procure renewable energy and particularly renewable energy credits from a community supporting source is by supporting community solar. And so we have a number of projects that we offtake from that are community solar. An initiative with more limited community reach might be working with a community solar facility that has really high credit score requirements that requires households typically to have higher levels of income in order to participate. We've really tried to take a more inclusive approach, working with suppliers where our offtake can actually help subsidize energy bill savings for low-income subscribers to really make that community solar a real benefit for the folks who live in the communities where we operate. Next thing I'd love to share is this model that we've been building over the past 5 or so years to take the power purchase agreements that we use. So I'm sure most, if not all of you know this, but the main instrument that we use for renewable energy procurement is a power purchase agreement that we enter into with independent power producers or utilities. And as part of our power purchase agreements, in many cases, we incorporate community benefits as sort of one of the attributes that are part of, so we get the power, we get the settlement, we get the renewable energy credit, and then we also say community benefits are one of those attributes. And so what happens in this model that we've developed, funding from the power purchase agreements flows through to a third-party community benefits manager. This is a nonprofit foundation that is independent from Microsoft and independent from the developer. And that's very important because we want to make sure that how that funding is getting allocated is not driven by our interests, not driven by the developer's interests, but is driven by what the community actually wants and needs. And so this third-party community benefits manager allocates funding across 3 broad areas. These areas are broad enough to really represent most of what a community might want, but still creating some guardrails around it being sustainability focused. So we see projects around sustainable and healthy infrastructure, so think energy efficiency, clean air, air pollution remediation, water pollution remediation, et cetera. Economic inclusion, so supporting workforce programs, scholarships, things like that. And then, of course, for the many of you in the room who work in the nonprofit sector, it's really important to fund sometimes the unglamorous capacity building costs like staffing and technology that are essential to well-functioning and successful and impactful organizations. So I'll move into 3 quick examples of what this work looks like in practice, starting with something that is here in the state of Wisconsin, in Portage County, which I believe is north of here. So we signed a PPA with Geronimo Power. They were formerly known as National Grid Renewables in October of 2024 for a 250 megawatt solar facility. When we signed that PPA, we determined that this is one that we, particularly because of our growing presence in Racine County with our data center complex that we're building there, we wanted to make sure that we were optimizing the positive community benefits associated with this PPA. So of course, the project on its own was expected to provide $24 million in local taxes, create hundreds of local jobs in the community around where the project is being built. But then as part of the agreement with Microsoft, we leveraged that model that I shared on the previous slide to build in a community fund such that over the 20 years of the PPA offtake, each year there will be community-based grant making facilitated by Sustain Our Future Foundation. They're a national organization that Microsoft and many of our collaborators have worked with. I actually can shout out my colleague Jenny, who's somewhere. Where is she? She can wave her hand back there if you're interested in learning more about Sustain Our Future. And so this is going to be, the funding is going to be allocated partially around the solar project as well as around where the Microsoft energy consumption is going to be in Racine County around that data center community. And then I wanted to share 2 other examples of projects that are a little bit further along. The Portage project, excitingly, has already broken ground. Construction is happening. There's steel in the ground, but these projects are a little bit further along, and some of that funding has actually been allocated. So one of the first big agreements that we did that incorporated community benefits was with Sol Systems. We signed a 500 megawatt PPA for a portfolio of projects, utility scale projects across the U.S. And the first investments from that initiative have been kind of concentrated in 2 areas. One in Appalachia, in central Appalachia, doing solar readiness work in coal-impacted areas. And so that looks like home retrofits, weatherization, repairs, electrification, et cetera. And then in southern Illinois, where there are another area where we have a number of projects, a lot of energy efficiency work, as well as work to support students through scholarships, workforce opportunities, et cetera. So we've been really excited to see the progress from this initiative, some of that impact start to come to fruition, and there's more to come over the next few years. The last quick example that I'd love to walk you all through is a framework agreement that we have with Pivot Energy. They are a distributed generation provider, and they build projects that often are used for community solar as well as qualified facilities. So they're all distribution scale, community scale solar projects. And so we signed a 5-year framework agreement with them to enable 500 megawatts to come online between 2025 and 2029. This deal is going to enable Pivot to build about 150 projects across about 100 communities in about 20 states. So it's exciting, pretty exciting reach. But what I'm most excited about and what we've seen from those 2025 projects, which have come online, is that each project has a tailored community benefit, has tailored community benefits based on what's most needed and valuable for the community in which the project is located. And so these benefits could look like workforce training and placement, where we're training folks and then actually having them work on pivot sites. Energy bill savings from community solar, sort of what I spoke to earlier, where our offtake is helping deepen the benefits to low-income subscribers, as well as investments with Sustain Our Future Foundation that, again, are very community-driven. So, you know, what does all this mean, right? I mean, as Microsoft continues to grow and build our data centers and expand our presence across the country and around the world, it's important that we do so sustainably, and we remain really committed to our sustainability goals. But it's just as, if not more important, that it is done in a way that is community-centric and where we are building infrastructure that benefits the communities in which we operate. I think that's the only way to make sure that you know that everyone really thrives from all this new infrastructure that's coming around. I will be here the rest of the day. I mentioned my colleague Jenny, and then my colleague Krista will be from our community affairs team. Will be at the table, the Microsoft table out there. If there are any questions or things you want to know about renewables and our data center presence here in Wisconsin. Thank you so much.
How about joining me in a round of applause for our very talented speakers here. I hope you gained some insights and shared the passion that our four speakers brought to their clean energy work. It really was a privilege bringing them front and center for you to hear their stories. So now we've reached the point in the program where we will have a short break. I encourage everyone to fan out and say hello and engage our many exhibitors here and network in the corridors. And then in about 20 to 30 minutes, we will then move into our morning breakout sessions. So thank you very much and enjoy the rest of the summit. Thank you.